the recording right now, and we can get started with the topic of today. So who are we and what's our vision? So first of all, like our vision is to create the next generation of business developers using the power of education. So everything we do is really meant to spread knowledge and insights into our profession so that we can help you and help ourselves also to become better in this field. So great, we have some more people joining. That's great. Perfect. So who we are. So why we created the BD school in the first place. So there is one problem that I faced for a long time. I worked in business development for about 12 years now. I worked in insurance companies, in startups, in scale-ups, in some very cool companies. But there was always one big problem that I found, which was not being able to find the right information about business development. I found out that the information in general and the knowledge related to our field is really fragmented, sometimes very inconsistent. And what I was doing was really going from a blog to another, trying to figure out a way to do my job. I'm pretty sure most of you do the same. For me, my go-to resources were Sales Hacker, HubSpot, and some other blogs that I found here and there. But still, this didn't really help me to figure out how to do my job, how to be more efficient, and ultimately to be less frustrated with whatever it is that I was doing. Well, when we started working on the BD school, we found out that there isn't only this problem of like, a lack of structured knowledge, but there is also the fact that many companies simply don't train their employees on business development because, well, sometimes they also don't really have it clear on what to do next. And this, makes it just very difficult for us working on the front line of the companies to reach our targets or even to be sure that what we're doing is actually what we are supposed to be doing. So we figured out that, we ran a survey since 2018, and what we figured out was some scary numbers, I have to say. Scary because I think in a working population of so large like ours, like just on LinkedIn, we are 40 million business developers. Well, it turns out that 43% of these business developers that took our survey, and we're talking of a sample about 1,000 people, most of these people, like 73%, were not aware of what their job requires, right? Which was a little bit strange. Then the second statistics that we found in our survey was that business developers, about 71% of the business developers that we talked to never received formal training from their company. And I can definitely believe that. I'm a business developer too. I didn't really receive training in my company. So I can definitely see the statistics in like how it plays out in the real life. And of course, like once we knew that more than 70% of people didn't really know what to do and didn't know what they were supposed to do and never received training, it really didn't surprise us to see that 53% of the business developers that took the survey mentioned not being able to, reach their target as one of their main challenges in their job. I mean, that's, I would say it's pretty normal. If you don't know what to do and your company doesn't really support you in learning what you have to do, of course, you cannot really achieve your targets. So we thought to do something about this. It was pretty much a selfish reason for me because I really wanted to connect with you guys and just see how you do things so that I could learn as well. And this first, let's say, selfish solution that I wanted to find became 2 years later the first educational platform for business development. And that's really what we want to do. So we want to provide you with content, knowledge, education, communities, and so on, so that you can find support that maybe you don't find in your companies, or that extra push that you need to be successful in your job. And yeah, as mentioned before, our vision is to create the next generation of business developers and startup founders using the power of knowledge. Now, how do we do that? Because of course it's easy to say an educational platform, but what does it really mean? Well, the way we decided to build our platform is to include three main elements in our learning stack, we call it. So the first one is the community. We have a community on Facebook called Business Developers United. You're more than welcome to join. I think Silvia is going to send you a link in a moment. But we created this community really to make sure that we could all network together and share best practices, share resources, and pretty much everything that can help us be more successful in our daily job. The second thing we do is courses. So of course, well, I call myself a learning freak. I really love to learn and to get knowledge and education. So for us, it was, let's say, natural step to go into more formal education. So we provide courses around business development too. And the last element of our learning stack, let's say the last pillar we can call it, or tool, is mentors. We're actually going to start with this in January, so stay tuned. But our mentors are students that took our course in the past months and decided to share their knowledge with other business developers. So they will just be at your service to share their knowledge, best practices, and so on. So let's go into the topic of today's webinar, which is what is business development? And before we go in the presentation, I always like to, ask your opinion. So we prepared a little poll here. So go ahead, I'm gonna launch it right now. Feel free to answer and just tell me, what is business development for you? That's a question that I always like to ask to everyone I talk to. I recognize a lot of names here. So if you had a chat with me, you probably figured out that I really love to ask this question. So I'm curious to see what most of the people reply here. And you will find out why then these options. And if you have other options, by the way, put them in the chat so we can read them at the end of the webinar when we're gonna do the Q&A session. So we have about 63% that already responded to the poll. Let's see, 70%. I see here like a large majority of us considers business development as finding growth opportunities. I'm happy about that, so that's good. There's still like a big majority of people also that consider it sales, so that's also interesting. And a few more people that are more towards market entry, process optimization. Someone marketing. I was waiting for you. I don't know who you are, but I was waiting for someone to mention that. Let's see, 80%. So we have a few more people that can respond to the poll. Let's see if someone has a different opinion from what we see here. Great. Last few seconds and we're going to stop it. Great. So turns out here, well, I'm very happy about this because 70% of us, 26 people, so congrats, they mentioned finding growth opportunity as what is business development. And I'm really happy to find that. Well, let's see what actually business development is and how like we went about it when we started working on this company. So the first thing I want to share with you is this quote that I found in a book like 0 to 1 from Peter Thiel. If you haven't read it, just go ahead and read it, especially if you're, if you want to have your startup at some point, or if you're very entrepreneurial, go ahead and read this book. But there was one thing that while I was reading it, there was this part of the book that really stuck with me for a long time. Like I read it maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And in the back of my mind, I always said like, there is a quote in a book about business development and I need to find it back. So at some point in the book, Peter Thiel says that sales is a little bit like acting, right? And why is that? Because it's better when you hide that you're selling something. Fair enough. Why is that? Because, well, many people, of course, don't like to be the feeling of being sold to. So he says that because of this, of course, it happens, there is a phenomenon that happens that everyone, or almost everyone that works in distribution has a job title that has nothing to do with those things, like selling. For example, people who sell customers usually say that they work in business development. So when I read this quote, then for me it was really clear that, okay, well, it wasn't just us, like that maybe we would get a bit frustrated when we always associate business development to sales. But there has been for years, this, let's say this practice, good or bad, I don't know, it's up to you to decide. But this practice of assigning business development to pretty much sales functions just because it sounded more fancy. And at the end of the day, when you're doing cold outreach or if you're trying to look for more partners and so on, well, you don't want to approach them as, oh, I'm the sales representative of the BD school. Well, you want to say that you're the business developer, And it doesn't matter then that you're screwing up the entire business development field or the sales field for that matter. It just sounds fancier. I think this is one of the main problems that we face in business development. And indeed, some people did mention sales as, the definition of business development. To be fair, when we started working on the BD school, we faced one first challenge, which was, okay, how do we define business development, right? So how can we create one definition that is really englobing everything that business development is all about? So in the survey, of course, well, I said it, I like to ask this question, but the first question was, how do you define business development? That was really the first thing we wanted to know. So many people, really, probably the majority of people said that business development was sales. Some others said that it was more partnerships. Then there were the more entrepreneurial ones, I think probably startup founders that said, no, business development is, it's hustling, fair enough. That's, I think it was a good call. Many people, though, they said that it was international expansion, closing deals, negotiation, and so on. And we found we found in total about 91 different definitions of business development, which of course, partially kind of explains why then many business developers are so confused about what they had to do. We have literally students that come to our course that say, look, I really want to learn how to describe what I do because my friends make fun of me, they just cannot understand what I do. I was one of them. To be fair, my mom still doesn't really understand what I do, but I'm working on that. So then how can we define it? So we decided to take one definition which we think kind of encompasses everything that has to do with business development. And that is also very close to what some of you, what the majority of you, 70% of you said, that business development is about finding growth opportunities. And that's true. At the end of the day, when we think about business development, we can't just be stuck into sales, marketing, or product development, which was also a surprise for us, by the way. I'll talk about that in a minute. But when we think about business development, we really need to think broader. If we think only about getting new customers, we're already missing out a lot of opportunities. If we think, for example, of a startup that doesn't have clients because it's just starting with a new idea, it's a little bit unrealistic to think that business development is sales because probably you don't even have a product to sell. So yet you're doing business development. So when we think about business development, we really need to think about all the activities, the tasks and the processes that we can undertake, that we can initiate in order to develop and implement growth opportunities within the organization, of course, but also between different organizations. But this needs to be done in a sustainable and profitable way. So of course, we can just, come up with new crazy ideas every 2 minutes. It needs to be a little bit sustainable and profitable on the long run. So when we started, I also felt that this definition was still a little bit limiting, right? Because I'm pretty sure that among you, there are some people saying, yeah, okay, great, we want to understand what is business development, but then you're telling me that it's just tasks and processes. Well, thanks. I knew that, but it doesn't really clarify anything. And you would be totally right. That's why there is a second part. There is let's say an annex to this definition, which has more to do with the mission of business development. So when we're thinking about business development, we're really thinking about the creation of long-term value for a company or organization, which comes from customers. Of course, I mean, every company needs customers eventually to grow, but it can also come from markets and relationships. Now, I really would like you to focus for a few minutes on the concept of value, on the very concept of value, because this is really a game changer when we think in terms of business development. Now, the concept of value is very subjective. What is valuable for me right now can be completely different to what's valuable to Silvia or to Alvaro right now, right? So when we think about value, we also need to take into account that the concept of value changes a lot in the life of a company as well. For example, when we started working on the BD school, the most valuable thing that we had was, of course, getting some feedback from you guys. We wanted to know what you thought about business development and whether it made sense for us to create a platform to help you learn about it. And then as we grew, of course, what was valuable became other things. For example, the feedback to the course from our students, because that could enable us to improve the quality of what we're doing and make sure that we can add more people. Probably in 5 years' time, the most valuable thing, of course, is going to be like having thousands of clients buying our products or services, right? Is exactly the same for each one of you. In each one of you, in each one of the companies you're working for, the concept of value changes with time, which means you as business developer need to be super aligned with this, with how the company is changing, and then try to find growth opportunities that can enable you to achieve this very valuable thing that the company is trying to achieve. And of course, what I said before, it comes from customers, and that's why many of us in business development typically work in the sales department. We'll see in a minute that for me this should change, but well, let's see what happens in the future. The other thing is markets, because for example, you could enter new markets whenever you saturate the first one, you could open different segments in the market and so on. So you see, like, of course, you're gonna get more clients through that, but the way to do that is just not by doing a cold call to the list of clients, right? It could be just exploring new markets, new opportunities. And the same for relationships, which I think it's even more important than the previous two. And why is that? Because when you build strong relationships, when you're really able to, when you know your ecosystem and you're able then to pull the triggers whenever you need, you can really get tons of value from the relationships you manage to build. And they can really enable you then to achieve your mission of creating long-term value for an organization. Now, let's talk one moment about the applications. And before that, I have one more question, because then maybe it can help us better understand like whether these things are still true for all of you or not. So the second question for you is, in what kind of company you're currently working for? Is it a startup, a scale-up, and a corporate? And I just want you to think about it so that you can then, you know, better maybe identify yourself in what we're going to talk about in the next 2 minutes. That's really cool. There are a lot of startups here, so that's nice. I see also a lot of corporates going up, scale-ups. Very cool. And we have about, great, 80% voters, 82. Let's see, a few more seconds and we're gonna close it. So great. If you didn't vote until now, I'm sorry. Closing the poll right now. So that's really cool. I see that it's very balanced. So that's, I hope you can spark some conversations in the chat, you know, and just share some knowledge already now. But let's see then, like, how does it change business development in these different life stages of a company? So let's start with the startups. I have, most of my experience was in startups. I worked for a bunch of very cool Dutch startups. The first one is called housinganywhere.com. I always bring it to my heart because that's really where I learned a lot about entrepreneurship and business development eventually. But I also worked for scale-ups like Recruity and Katawiki, two very big companies in Amsterdam, and corporates. But that was an insurance company and I didn't really like it. But let's see how business development changes in these stages. So when we think about the applications of business development, of course, we need to take into account many different factors. So this one is a simplification of it because it would get like very complicated otherwise. But we can consider two main things when we think about the applications of BD, which is in which stage is currently the company at? Is it a startup, a scale-up, or a corporate? And what is the overall goal for the company? Now, we see that if we work for a startup, if if we're the founder, we're pretty much the first business developer of our company, but you can also be a business developer that is just starting for the company. So when we're working for a startup, our main goal, of course, is to validate our idea. And more than validate our idea, we really want to validate the need for our idea, right? We want to make sure that there are people that maybe one day are going to buy what we want to sell to them or what we want to provide to them. Now, in this first stage of a company, what we do is a lot of strategic business development. So really trying to figure out how does your ecosystem look like? Who are the important actors for you? Who are the relevant people you should involve in your project? And this, of course, involves a lot of research in terms of market research, customer research, competitor analysis, and so on and so forth. Then we can do a lot of experiments. And this, if you were in the past webinar about growth hacking, we talk extensively about that. And we kind of stole this concept from them. I mean, they stole it from the scientific method anyway. So when we think about like doing business development in a startups, it really means just, trying a lot of different things, initiating a lot of different activities, and then trying to figure out which one is the, golden egg that is going to make the company grow, right? So we do a lot of new things on a very regular basis, and we try to make sure to open up new channels, to, talk to many different people, partners, customers, and so on. And of course, we do a little bit of marketing too. Now, when we think about this kind of stuff, marketing, product development, and so on, it doesn't mean that as business developers now suddenly we need to be very good at creating Facebook ads or how to do Google ads and so on. It's really not about that. It's about knowing how these things work, knowing that they exist in the first place, and then make sure that we can apply this concept in our small scale, right? Because at the end of the day, as business developers, we very often work alone, right? And especially for company founders, well, that's even more so. The second stage then is scale up, and it's really when a company starts being, sustainable. They have profit, they keep growing year over year, they grow everything, the revenue, the team members, and so on. And here the goal, of course, is growth. Like here, they probably validated their idea. They have some processes that work already for them. So it's really time to just, repeat on those ones and make sure that you make it more sustainable and that you can grow fast at a fast rate. That's why when we go into a scale up, especially if it's a tech scale up or if it's, let's say, a SaaS company and so on, business development typically at this stage really becomes more sales development. And why is that? Is because we already have processes in place. We know how to find clients, so we can just reiterate on what we're doing. Does it mean that business developers should just stop doing everything else? In our opinion, not really. And actually, we think there is a big problem with scale-ups here because they really get stuck into just the sales development part of the business. While we think that they could use business developers for some more initiatives that don't involve necessarily sending cold emails or doing cold calls, but that is more oriented to, really enabling them to work in a digital world. So which means helping them produce content, creating online reputation for themselves, and so on. But typically in a scale up, like that's what you find around at the moment. So typically sales development and of course market entry. So if you're the lucky French speaker, Spanish speaker, German speaker that is looking for a job, probably scale ups are the best place for you to go to. Because typically what the scale ups saturate the first market. Let's say we're in the Netherlands. If you do a good job, you can grow pretty quickly in the Netherlands. It's a tiny country, which means after you kind of need to go look for customers somewhere else, right? Or for opportunities somewhere else. So typically these ones are the two main applications of business development in a scale up. And then we go to the corporate world. And here, of course, like corporates, they probably already have, like, they're there for a while. They know what they're doing. So their goal, is not to validate the idea, neither to grow that. Of course, growth is the underlying reason for every company to exist. But a corporate, what it's trying to do is to consolidate their position in the market, right? So they want to make sure that they're there to stay, and they're going to do everything they can to just consolidate their position in the market. We can think about big companies like Unilever, Coca-Cola, and so on. Now, when we think about business development in this kind of companies, I think we always need to think about two different levels. And there are always usually very different strategies at stake here. And why I say two levels, because of course, if you are, let's say, the VP of business development of Coca-Cola, you probably have a lot of very ingent resources that you can use for whatever campaign you want to run. You want to buy a new product, you want to create a fancy new campaign, offline campaign on TV or whatever, like you can do pretty much everything. However, if you're a business developer that is working as in an entry-level position, well, most likely what you're going to be doing is, well, you're probably going to work in big campaigns, but you're going to work as an individual contributor. Now, why I say these two levels, and why also for me, probably like working in corporate is not the most fulfilling personally, is because typically, unless you're in high positions, you might risk, to just be doing the same things over and over again, which is not really the most creative side of business development. I typically like more this one, the startup one, where you can actually get creative and come up with a lot of new crazy ideas that you can test rapidly. And, typically, like, you have a lot less risks than in a corporate. So of course, makes sense also that as an individual business developer just starting their career in a corporate, you're probably just going to execute on what's been asked to you. So what's the role then of business developers? Like, what is it that we're supposed to do as business developers? Well, the first thing is typically nowadays, business developers are either put in the sales department or in the marketing department. There isn't really like a way in between. What we think at the BD School is that business development should be a department by itself, and there are a lot of companies that do that, and we think it's great. But why should be a separate role? Because as a business developer, you're really like, we always like to call it the creative side of business, right? Because you're there just trying new things, trying to open up new channels, and so on and so forth. And you really work in the field. You're always in front of your audience, be it partners, customers, and so on, but you're always in the field. Which means because you're in the field and you're always facing, everything that's happening around you, you're also the person that is, more, let's say, adapted to, give ideas based on what you find in the market, right? So if you find out that one of your competitors is creating a new product that is gonna get them 10,000 clients in 1 year, maybe you want to go back to your product development team and say, hey, you know what? Our competitors are creating this new product. Do you think it's something we should consider? And if so, how are we going to do that? And it's the same for marketing and sales. So what we do is really initiate new stuff, new activities, see if they work. And then when they work, we bring them back to these new departments, to these other more established departments that can make them as a real process. To make a very basic example, like now we're here in this webinar. Like, webinars are a great way to put your face out there, to be recognized by your audience, and just to showcase what you're doing, right? That's exactly what we're doing now. Now, the first time I organized a webinar, it was 3 years ago, when I was working in a company in Amsterdam. I was really struggling to do my job. I just couldn't really move forward. My manager also didn't really know like what we had to do. He told me very honestly, like, I never did that, so let's figure it out together, which I really appreciated. But then at some point I started being really frustrated because all I was asked to do was to send cold emails using the tool that would find contacts for me. So I didn't even have to look for these people, and just click send on an email, which was like, I think I can do more than that, So I started reading a lot. Again, every time I feel frustrated, I start reading. And I definitely suggest you that. Just read books, watch videos, do webinars so that you can get some creativity back. So at some point, I read like there was really the boom of webinars a couple of years, 3 years ago, like everybody was doing webinars. And I said, guys, why don't we do a webinar? So maybe that can help us get, a foot in the market and see what people want to hear. So we did that. I was in charge of the project back then. So I collected all the resources from the different departments. We had a designer, we had a content writer, we had a growth marketer, and so on. We created this webinar. We got about 600 signups, of which 300 joined the webinar, and one bought our software like 3 hours later. That was a lot more effective than 6 months of sending cold emails randomly. What happens next is that the marketing, like back then it was growth team, the growth team took this project, let's say, and they just made it a process out of it. So every month there was a new webinar, everything was prepared, and it was primarily the marketing team organizing everything. So when you think about business development, you can't just get stuck into cold calls and the cold emails. There is a lot more that you can do, especially if we work in the digital products, and pretty much every company nowadays is online. There is really a lot more you can do in terms of content, in terms of social media, or webinars, organizing events, and so on. You can really get creative, and then of course use your personality and your your preferences, to come up with even more fun ideas that you can try out. Now, as you can see here, like most of this stuff were in the first question, which is, okay, how do you define business development? So we put sales, marketing, market entry, and so on. Well, the truth is that all these things we can really consider as the strategies of business development, because as a matter of fact, we're not really, I think like none of us here is a marketer, are you? Like if you work in business development, I don't think many of us, create Facebook campaigns and so on. I mean, probably you did it. I did it when I was at Housing Anywhere. We created these very fun campaigns using, very, like how to say, controversial topics, to get the attention of our people. So I think all of us did some of these things, but we're not really specialists in these things, and we shouldn't be, I dare saying. Why is that? Because the moment we specialize, then we really cannot get the creative juices that we need to find new opportunities for our company. So when we think about the strategies, when we think about sales now or about marketing, we shouldn't consider it as, well, yeah, I do marketing, business development. No, we do business development, and we collaborate with all these functions of the company. We use these processes or best practices or ideas from these different departments to come up with something new that we can use. Another good example is in marketing. So when we do marketing campaigns, for example, let's say email marketing, a marketer, like one of your colleagues working in marketing, is creating a lot of different emails with different topics and so on that they send to everyone, right? Let's say you have 200,000 people in your database. They all receive the same email, very impersonal, which of course works because, well, it focuses on the volumes. What you can do as business developer is take the very same concept of email marketing and you apply to your own case. So let's say you work in strategic partnership. Your job as business developer is to find partners that can distribute your product. Well, when you do email marketing with them, so you can apply exactly the same process. You can use the same tools. You can use MailChimp if you want, which is even free until a certain point. You can use whatever tool that marketing uses, but what you're going to do it on a smaller scale, right? So you're going to do it with the people that you're in touch with on a regular basis, right? And that's really the main difference then within these two different departments. The same for product development. Not all of us are born engineers, right? So maybe we cannot really develop a software ourselves, or maybe we cannot create a packaging for our new shampoo alone. However, we know how our customers, our partners want to see things. We know what's important to them. So we can work together with the product development team. We should know how the product development process works so that we can better collaborate with them to create growth opportunities together. So what are some activities? And again, this is really simplification. I know that all of you are probably doing a lot more than just these activities. At least that's the case for me, and I'm sure it's the case for you too. But of course, we want to keep it simple, right? So what are some key activities that every business developer does? Research, of course, we mentioned it before already. And well, if you talk to our students, I think they're going to tell you I bore them so much because I'm always talking about research all the time. I also say that as business developers, sometimes we like to hide behind the research. I know that was the case for me. Sometimes it was much easier to just keep researching stuff instead of doing stuff. So, but that's another topic. But research is very important. So whatever it is we're doing in business development, we need to be aware of what's going on so we can take the right decisions. The other step, the other activity then is idea generation. Of course, if we want to create growth opportunities, it's first is not enough to just copy what everybody's doing, but we really need to make sure that we are creative enough to come up with new ideas that can spark the growth for our companies. We experiment a lot, of course. We work with other teams, so it's very important. Modern activities, I would say, a skill, cross-team collaboration. The same goes for project management. The example I made before of the webinar, well, it involved in total 6 people and took a month to realize. So project management is very important, especially if you are a founder, especially if you're a solo founder out there. That's really the first thing you need to nail, because you're going to have to do a lot of things at the same time, and it's very easy to get lost. Lead generation, I think, is the activity by excellence for every business developer out there. Negotiation, and sometimes this is not really, yeah, I think all of us, or many of us, associate negotiation to either sales, partnerships, or sometimes salary negotiations. But the truth is that as a business developer, you're constantly having to convince your managers of doing something new that maybe you never tried and that you don't have a clue whether it's going to work or not. So good luck with that. So I know that in my case, it was difficult sometimes. And that's where I realized that maybe I should improve my negotiation skills. Why is that? Because at the end of the day, we're constantly negotiating. We're negotiating with our partners on a daily basis, our parents, sisters, brothers, like everyone around us. So in business development, that is definitely not different. And the last thing, depending on the type of company where you work at, is of course closing deals. If you work primarily in a sales organization, or again, if you're a startup founder, it's up to us to do that too. So what are then some expectations? And yeah, I probably, you can answer in the chat, but I like, my big problem when I was working for companies was that my boss, my managers, they always had very unrealistic expectations of what we had to do. Like, I started working for a company at some point, it was a software development company, which had projects for very large amounts of money and very long processes, like very long projects, because, well, it was about like, we were going after like governments and this kind of stuff. So typically a sales process with these kind of organizations was really long. And if you do only sales, then, well, of course you have the time to do that. But I was not doing only that. I was taking care of many more stuff as a business developer. So after 1 month, the founders started feeling a lot of pressure, and they started asking, okay, did you get some deals already? Did you get some deals already? It was like, guys, you didn't even know who your customers were, you know, like, we have to figure that out. So sorry, but I'm not going to get you a customer in 1 month. I'm still trying to understand how you work here, you know, and you're never around. So, you know, like, I need some time to learn this stuff. So business development is not something that happens overnight. Business development, like, we go after long-term value creation. We're not after quick wins, which means it's a long-term investment. So whenever you want to start with business development, you need to take into account that it's going to take a long time, and it's going to take a long time. Results are not going to come. And worst than ever, and worse for all of us, is that we're going to make so many mistakes. We're going to fail so many times. And that's really cliche to say, but that is true, that whenever we fail, we need to learn from it and move fast. That's yeah, I think it's like whenever you work in a startup, or like even in a big company that has really this experimental attitude towards stuff, like if you think about Amazon, yeah, for Amazon, for example, like, they run experiments all the time, you know, they really embrace this like failure as a learning opportunity. And I know it's very cliche, but for us it's really the same. Like, if we want to grow, we can't be scared of failing. We need to know that it's part of the game, so we just need to embrace it and then just move on fast. And of course, keep in mind the negotiation stuff. For every time your boss comes to you and wants you to close like 1,000 deals in a month, yeah, make it clear for them as well that it's not always very realistic. As a matter of fact, it is really not realistic. So that was a problem for me, but I'm curious to hear your stories. So if you have some other stories like that, just share them in the chat. So then, and this is the last part, and then we open to the Q&As. So the last part is all about the mindset. And I know some of you here, so I recognize some names, and I can definitely put you in the club framework, like you're definitely like that. But what we figured out when we started working on the BD school is that there are some personality traits of business developers that can really predict whether they're going to be successful or not. And this was originally was really like an empirical, let's say, learning. Because, I was talking to many business developers, like I have many friends that are business developers or founders. So talking to them, I could definitely say, I know, but, Martina is really creative, and yeah, Morgan is so persistent, and Mike is really adaptable, So I would just imagine these people that I talk to on a daily basis are like, yeah, okay, I can see some similarities. But of course, I really don't trust my assumptions, and I don't trust assumptions in general, so don't do that either. So of course, the first thing we did was research, right? So in the survey that we did, we said, okay, let's try to figure out also what type of people are business developers. Are there some things that we should know that can really help people become better at their job? So at some point, we took this very big whiteboard, we put down a lot of keywords, a lot of skills, and so on. Very overwhelming. And then we started, like filtering out like all the main personality traits. And well, what we figured out is that most of the business developers have, of course, a lot more skills and talents than these ones. But these four are really the main personality traits that, if you want to start today to improve your business development game, these are the four main things that you should be working on. And then, of course, a long list of other skills and talents that you can develop, but yeah, do one thing at a time. It can get overwhelming. So the first thing is creativity. And of course, why is that important? Because, well, we said it throughout this entire session, as business developers, our job is to find new growth opportunities, to be updated with the new tools. Like, is there like TikTok? How can we use it for business? Snapchat, Instagram, whatever tool comes out, like how can we use it for our advantage? There is a new association in town. Is it relevant to us? There is a new this, a new that. Is it good for us? So we need to think out of the box, to be creative, so that we can be more careful to what's going on around us. The second element of the club framework is learning agility. Like as business developers, I mean, you're all here. Some of you were here even like way before time, which like I love that, because it means you just can't wait to get to know something new. Like we need to learn. We need to constantly be updated with what we're doing, because it's the only way we can really, find new opportunities and so on. I had once a colleague, like she was really, she was living in her world. We would always make fun of her because like every time we mentioned something super popular, she just didn't know it, like she was really out of the word. So don't be like her. Make sure that you learn daily, that you learn something new. It doesn't need to be about business development in general or like about your jobs. It just needs to be something that keeps your brain active, right? That, just new knowledge that you get in, and then maybe one day you can use. But what's important is not really what you learn. Of course, it's important, but to a certain extent. But what's important is that you really make an effort to keep learning. The A in the club framework stands for adaptability. I think like after 2020, we all understood the importance of adaptability and just being able to, adapt quickly to new situations. COVID hit hard a lot of companies and business developers. Many of us really struggled because, well, suddenly everything changed. So we really needed to change our way of working really quickly. So, well, kudos to all of you that did that, but definitely being adaptable can really be an advantage, because things are changing really fast. Like there are new technologies, customers are like, changing every day. There is something new every day. So we need to be really able to adapt quickly to change, so that we can better, position ourselves and keep growing our companies. And the last thing is persistence. And there is like, when I was working at Housing Anywhere, which is a student housing platform based here in Rotterdam, we had this playbook with like pretty much all the knowledge about the company that we had to study like on a daily basis. And the first thing we had there was persistence is key. And Niels, the founder, we did a webinar with him, by the way, about market entry. You can check it on our website. But yeah, persistence is key. And that was so true, because when we're doing whatever, like in whatever type of business development we work, be it sales, be it more partnerships or marketing and so on, like we said it before, it's a long-term game, which means sometimes we just need to push through, just do one extra thing to make sure that what we're doing is working. Now, I think persistence is something that it's very important in business development, but sometimes we really tend to overlook it, or sometimes we just give up too easily. I get that, because sometimes in business development, you can feel really lonely. You can feel really like, everything is on your shoulder, nothing is working, and you just need to keep doing. It can be really heavy at times, right? But we always have to keep in mind, like we're not here for the short term. We're not here for the quick wins. We're here for the long term. So we're here to stay, and which means like we just need to keep going until we get, our results, whatever is the outcome we want to get. So this is also the last part about what is business development, and I always like to end with one small thing, which is a small exercise for you, which of course you're not obliged to do, but that's something we ask to all our students. So every time we do this session, which is also part of the course, we always say, okay, now that you know the importance of developing your personality to become a better business developer, do just one thing, which is create one learning objective, which can be as big or small as your schedules allow you to, but really strongly commit to it. In my case, for example, and I'm not really good at it though, I'm still behind, but my learning objective of the year was to read 20 books. I really love reading books because I think it's really like the knowledge you can find in there, the examples and the way it opens your mind is really like just nothing comparable to other mediums for me. So I had this very ambitious goal at the beginning of the year of 20 books. I'm not there yet. I think I will end the year with probably the half of it. But just creating this objective for me was so important to know where I was going towards. And it can be anything. It can be reading like one page every day, or like meeting one new person every day. There was one of the students that told me that. I found it really cool. It can be just reading the news every day so that you know what's going on around you and you can communicate with other humans. Just like whatever it is that you want to commit to, that you feel is good with your schedule, try to do that, and they really like of all this, I really would like you to take this as a takeaway, put it in practice immediately, start learning and see how this is going to change your way of working and how in general you look at business development. So thank you so much. Now it's of course your time to shine, and we can open the Q&As. Silvia, do we have some questions in the chat maybe?
Yes, so a few participants asked if the slides and the recording of the webinar will be available after the seminar.
Yeah, it will be. We will publish everything right after, so we will receive an email with everything.
Okay, then we have a question from Ingrid. She asked what lead generation tools or software would you recommend for the UK market?
So it really depends actually in terms of lead generation. So is it maybe for B2B or B2C?
She didn't specify.
So Ingrid, if you're still here, can you tell us if it's B2B or B2C?
B2C.
Perfect,
B2C.
yeah. And what industry? Maybe that can also help.
What industry? We also don't know that yet.
Let's see.
Finance.
Finance. Okay, that's good. So typically, so I would always recommend, like, you always need to see case by case. And in terms of tools, it can really change depending on how you set up your lead generation strategies. Typically, like what I recommend always to every company is to do content marketing always, like that's a given, because that can really bring you a lot of leads, for free. that's the beauty of it. So focus on SEO and building content that can help your audience, which is always the underlying thing. So whenever you do stuff to find new clients and so on, you need to bring value. So content is definitely a staple. Focus on that. Try to write about stuff that people want to find solution for, and that is going to generate on the long term. That's really like a very business development like strategy. On the long term, you can really rely on SEO and organic search. Then, of course, I don't really know what type of product you have, but when it comes to B2B, like to B2C, you need to identify where is the channel where your leads are, where your target audience is. I don't know precisely, so I would say any social media where you know that your audience hangs out is a good place to be. Now, when we think about lead generation, sometimes, like, because you mentioned tools already, I think that more than tools is about like the way we find the leads. Because, for example, if you are in a B2C environment, you could find communities on Facebook maybe or LinkedIn where you can just be present, you share your content, you respond to questions and so on, and you can find leads through that. You can run campaigns as well. But again, not knowing precisely your type of company, I can't be too tailored. But just being active on these communities where your audience is very important because it can get you a lot of leads. You could use partnerships as well. You could partner up with some companies that do something similar, and the partnership can be anything from putting a link to their blogs to doing a guest article altogether, maybe post on social media and so on. In terms of tools, like I use some scraping tools, and maybe I can put it after, Ingrid, I can send you a message, or we can put it in the slide. I use scraping tools to just build lists of companies. That works really well for example, Google Maps, but that's more B2B. So if you have businesses, you can really scrape like contacts of people and then you contact them in the best way you think it's possible. And yeah, I would definitely say like any tool, like any platform where your audience is. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn though, maybe we can brainstorm some more. Great. Silvia, is there some other questions? Oh, we can't hear you.
Okay, so yeah, we have a question. Just a second. Well, what do you think of the corporate spin-offs entering to a new market?
I think that's really cool. I think it's really creative and it can really bring a lot of opportunities to like the most entrepreneurial people in companies. And the good advantage of that is also that you have resources usually. So it's not a typical startup, that doesn't have any resource. So we always have to deal with what we have and make it be enough. So I think there is really a lot of advantage to being in a startup or a spin-off of a corporate. Then of course it depends. It always depends on the type of company, on the level of freedom they give you. But I have a lot of friends that work they used to work for banks doing a very boring job, and then suddenly the bank decided to open a more modern division where they would just do innovation, create paying apps and so on. And that's really, that can be a huge opportunity for you as an individual contributor. So if you have a chance, if you work in a corporate and you hear that they're having like startups or like spin-offs, I would definitely go for it. Great. Silvia, do you have are there other questions? Great. So then, thank you very much, everyone. We have a little surprise for you. Maybe not so surprise if you follow us on social media, but we're running a contest actually. We're giving away one free spot to the next course, which is going to start on the 21st of November. So if you want, you can participate. That's the link. You can find it there. Maybe Silvia can share it also in the chat. And if you know someone that is currently looking for a job in business development, because maybe you don't have the time to take the course or you don't want to, that's also fair enough. But if you know someone that is looking for a job, feel free to refer them to us, and we're always happy to help new people find their career, their dream career. So thank you very much, everyone. Thanks a lot, Silvia. She's our content marketeer, the most recent addition to the BD School team. It was a pleasure, as usual, and we see you again next month with the next webinar, which is going to be about building your dream career. We're going to have a guest. It's going to be fun, I think. So see you, everyone, and thank you so much for attending this webinar.